the things that you have to say, people should know. It's important what you just said. Wall Street cannot be trusted. I believed in the American way. I believed in our legal system. And, that's what really killed that for me. I was handed to some prosecutors by the big boys on Wall Street. That cost them a lot of money in their mind, even though they took advantage of exactly what I created. That's the craziest part. They used what I did to benefit themselves, and they jailed me and punished me.
You know who made it.
Welcome back to the Wealth Easy Show, where we talk all things wealth, health, and real estate. Today, folks, I've got a real special guest. I've been looking forward to speaking with this man for quite some time now. My guest today is a Wall Street pioneer. He's been featured on CNBC, the BBC, Fox News, and many more. He was the first person to successfully list 2 American companies on the London Stock Exchange. At the height of his career, his net worth exceeded $100 million, combined with his businesses over $400 million. But in 2012, he was convicted for securities fraud and sentenced to 12 years in a federal prison. He was released in 2023 and is here today to share his incredible story. Please welcome to the show the original Wolf of Wall Street, Ross Mandell. Thank you, Ross, for being here.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Man.
So great to see you today. So great to be on your show.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. And we were just banting back and forth and about, how you got started and, working with different companies in Wall Street. We were talking about how I just published my book. And I think there's going to be a really courageous conversation because you were I'm going to say the original Wolf of Wall Street. You were the man. And I want to hear your story about your success, how you got started on Wall Street, the height of your career, and then one day it all just came crashing down. So why don't you give my listeners a 2-minute, well, I don't think you can keep it to 2 minutes, but we'll try and keep the Cole's notes to a 2-minute bio on how you got started on Wall Street.
I'd love to do that, but I just want you to know, and I want the listeners to know, I just did an inside true crime podcast with a guy named Matthew Cox. And it went 5 hours and 13 minutes. And over 37,000 people have already watched it. And I'm told the majority of them watched the whole 5 hours. That's stunning to me. But, I'm a big fan, John. I did a little homework on the Wealth Eazy podcast and your book, which I was incredibly impressed with. If you haven't read it, you owe it to yourself to go get it. And I wrote a curriculum, a business curriculum called the Wealth Formula. Yes. So when I saw the Wealth Eazy podcast, I was psyched because, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I do and what I've been doing since I'm a young man. So I'll tell you, my father passed away when I was 16 years old, and I reacted very poorly. I was very angry. I found out my family, everything was borrowed, mortgaged, or leased. We were broke. We were living the American dream. And right away, my mother said, forget going to, Columbia or Wharton. I was slated to go to maybe into the Wharton School of Business. I was already accepted by many universities. I was a really star student. I was ranked 6th out of 624 in my high school. And the day my father passed away, I smoked some marijuana. My cousin gave me a joint to smoke with him right after the funeral, and I took one hit, and my life changed. I felt all this pain ease a little bit when I smoked that weed. I took a few hits. I was stoned. Remember, I'm 16 years old, and my father just passed away suddenly. He was never sick a day in his life. And I just went crazy. And that began a 17-year run of drugs and alcohol. And and it's been published many times, my anonymity was broken on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, March 14th, 1996. Drug addict, cocaine addict, alcoholic, etc., and many other things. But I went crazy. All I cared about was getting high, not feeling my feelings. I was just medicating myself is one way to put it. But I was young. I was healthy. I was a football player in high school, on the wrestling team. I was a power lifter, and I went crazy, and I became sort of like the kid in the neighborhood that mothers would warn their children about. You know, stay away from Ross Mandell. He's really, and then of course a lot of the young women were attracted to me because every woman
A
likes a
bad
bad,
boy. Yeah.
and I mean that's just it's just it's phraseology, but there's a lot of truth in
Yeah.
it. Believe me. And all I cared about was having fun. I didn't care if I lived or died. I felt like my life was over at 16. It's pretty crazy, right? And I finished high school. I barely passed. They let me graduate because I had been such a great student and athlete, and they felt bad for me. But I had gotten scholarships for wrestling and for academics. So I went to a state university in my first year. I just refused to leave my dorm and go to school. But I growing up in a neighborhood, we were in an upper middle class neighborhood. We were just the poor cousins, so to speak, and that served to drive me later in life to want to always get more. But at this point in time, to be honest with you and your listeners, I'm a drug addict, and I need what I need, and I like to party. And I grew up in a rich area. We were 45 minutes away from New York City, so we're 17, 18. We're driving into Manhattan, and I always managed to hook up with sort of very ambitious young men. I go to University of Maryland. I end up graduating in 3 years, and I go into New York City, not giving not even a thought about what I was going to do with my life. I just never even thought about it or cared. Guys that were very motivated, very ambitious, very much go-getters. They liked me because I was very aggressive, and I had no inhibitions. How do you have inhibitions when you're loaded with drugs all the time, or drink or some sort of drug? Make a long story short, one day I go out with my friend. I'm making about $150,000 a year as a salesman in
What were you
1979
selling?
in Manhattan, which I was selling ladies' handbags. I knew
Hmm.
nothing about them, but I was very. It turns out I was a good salesman. I like people. I can talk to anybody. My wife says you can talk to the guy that sweeps the floors and mops the bathroom for hours, or you can talk to the CEO of IBM, which I have, for hours, and you don't miss a beat because I just like people. I do. I find people fascinating, and I enjoy meeting new people and chatting them up. And I go out with my friend one day, and I'm all full of myself. I just made partner at the handbag firm. I'm making like 3 grand a week, and they give me an American Express card where I could literally charge 5 grand a month. They bought me a brand new white Mustang, and they paid to park it in Manhattan. I mean, this package, in today's money, was like making 750,000 a
Wow.
year, and on all that. And I'm 23 years old, and I'm making 150, and my friend takes me out, and he says he's going to Wall Street. He's going to work at Merrill Lynch. A year later, we're out, and he says, "Let me pick up the check." I said, "You must well." He goes, "Yeah, I made 400 this year."
Wow.
I said, $400,000.
Reminds me of the scene in Wolf of Wall
I
Street
mean,
when they're in
right,
the restaurant. He said,
with,
"Bullshit. Show me your check. I'll work for you."
right. Well, I have that same kind of
Okay.
story,
Wow.
literally. I have that same. I'm going to tell you something very interesting. In the Wolf of Wall Street, it was the story of two guys, Jordan Belfort and a guy named Danny Porish. Sued the production company, so they didn't use his name because he had $100 million a year business at the time. They went by Donnie Azoff in the movie, but his real name is Danny Porish. And I grew up with Danny. And the movie came out in 2013. That was 11 years ago. And during those 11 years, Jordy Belfort, his star went on the rise. Boy,
Yeah.
he's been everywhere. He's been on every talk show. He's got a podcast. He lives on Star Island in Miami. He's worth over $100 million right now. And I understand he's making that kind of money now. Danny Porish, who was the president of Stratton Oakman and his partner, has never spoken to anybody about what happened in the movie, his story with Jordan ever. He's been chased by Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan in 60 Minutes and ABC, CBS, NBC. Everybody wants to talk to him. He's never spoken in 11 years. 2 weeks ago, I had him in my studio for 2.5 hours right here on this set. He reveals everything for the
Wow.
first time. You're going to hear the real
I gotta
story
hear that. When's it coming out?
of the Wolf of Wall Street, of Jordan and Danny. But to make a long story short, This guy says he made 400,000. What do you do for 400,000? He says, well, I take a car service down to Wall Street. We have to be there by 8 a.m. I drink a lot of coffee. I sit in an office and I talk on the phone. Meanwhile, I'm schlepping around 9 months a year in airports, different cities, different hotels, selling ladies' handbags to like Kmart and all the shoe chains and the big department stores and all that. And he's making I knew the partners in my firm weren't making 400 grand a year. I'm making 150 as a salesman, as a junior partner. They're making like 400. We're kids, like we're in our 20s.
And this is about what, late 80s?
No, this is 1981.
$400,000 back then is probably like $2 million today.
Right. He made in 82, he made like 750.
That's crazy.
You're talking millions, yeah. Right. And I said to him, can you get me in? And he says, you know what? He hems and haws, and he's not that kind of guy. And I realized that because I confronted him at some point, and he wouldn't recommend me because he knew I was a fucking raging drunk. And that really sort of, instead of me looking at myself and saying, you know, this is your closest friend, he won't even recommend you. And meanwhile, you're a stud sales guy, but you're that was the first inkling that I had a real problem. Because these are all my good friends from college now, we're all going down to Wall Street. I said, you know what, fuck you. I'm going to Wall Street. I'm that kind of guy, John. That's just the kind of guy I am. Obstacles to me are just issues. They're not problems. And I was once told that anything that can be solved by time or money is an issue, not a problem. Mm-hmm. And I believe that. I bought into that. So I can deal with issues. Problems are another story, you know. Got a terminal disease, it's a problem. You have an autistic child. These are things that time and money don't cure. But make a long story short, I rely on a lot of contacts. I'm very aggressive. I do everything I can do. I get hired by the E.F. Hutton training program, which was at the time one of the top 3 training programs in the world to the stock market. I wasn't very good on the phone. I was very nervous. I didn't know anything about stocks or bonds, and I was competing in those days. Remember, in 82, it was the beginning of Wall Street meets Main Street. Telemarketing, securities.
You're just picking up the phone. You're just dialing, like, you know, kind of like the movie with Will Smith where he's just like, they said, how do you just get so fast when dialing? He goes, I don't even hang up. I just hit the button and I'm dialing. Is this what you're doing all day, just dialing people?
I would go see how long I could go without that phone leaving my ear. I'll never forget one of the happiest days of my life was that when they created a wireless headset. I didn't have to hold the phone. I mean, you know, I used to get cramps in my hand, my hand. I would like this, like that. I would play a game with myself. How long could I go without putting the phone down?
So how many calls would you make in a day?
Okay, so this was revealed in the March 14th, 1996, the biggest story in the history of the Wall Street Journal at that time. 5,250 words. They were fascinated with my story. You make 300 dials a day back in those days. And I think the numbers statistically stay the same today. You on average, over time, you'll get 100 people to pick up a phone or answer the phone out of 300 dials. And you really had to keep a record of every dial, of every call that you make. The firm would produce sheets with the numbers 1 to 300. Most guys just lie, but I'm an addict, and anything that involves repetition, I thrive. I can just do it. I have endless energy because I become addicted to dialing the phone. I become addicted to making phone calls. I get addicted to talking to people. I get addicted to the money. I'm an addict, for real. I have all these addictive qualities. The idea for me was being able to harness them and steer them in the right direction.
Hey everyone, it's John. I just wanted to thank you for being here, and I would ask that you please subscribe to the show by just clicking the subscribe button right here. I'd really appreciate it. It helps grow the show so we can get even more successful guests on the program to help you. If you're already subscribed, a huge thank you. When you subscribe, you're going to get access to the program before anybody else does. So if you would, just click subscribe right here. Thanks so much. And welcome back to the Wealth Easy Show. So you got these sheets,
So
and you're making 300 calls a day. Now, these sheets, are they targeted to a certain class of people or a certain area, a certain zip code?
no, these are literally just this is just a sheet with numbers 1 through 300, and you just dial, you check off one. It doesn't matter. No one answers the phone. You get an answering machine. 300 dials a day yields 100 people. Go off. Don't ever call me back. I'm calling the police. What's your name? I'm going to report you. All kinds of horrible things, right? But 10 people will become what you call leads. They'll answer your questions. They're willing to accept an introductory package from me and the firm, basically detailing who we are.
So what was your pitch?
Who I am.
You call me, I pick up the phone, and you don't get a fuck off. What's your pitch? What are you saying?
Hey, John. How are you doing today? My name is Ross Mandell. I'm an account executive with the F. Hutton Company on Wall Street. How you doing today? I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time.
A little busy, Ross, but what is it you're selling today?
I know you're a busy guy, and I'm selling absolutely nothing today. And if I had something, I would share with you, but I don't. The purpose of this call is just to introduce myself and my firm, say, hey, see how you're doing, and wondering if from time to time you invest in stocks, bonds, if you're interested in a really outstanding recommendation in the capital gains sector of the stock market. Are you interested in making some money down the road, John?
Yeah, but I've got a financial advisor, and I dabble in some stocks here and there.
Listen, I would never want to interfere or disrupt any current or existing relationships you have. All I'm asking for today is I want to send out my introductory package. You're John McGuire, still 1313 Mockingbird Lane in Toronto, Canada. Is that still your best mailing address?
Yes, sir.
Terrific. John, just let me ask you a quick question. When's the last time you did make an investment with your financial advisor in the stock market?
Just last month.
Do you recall? Okay, when you do make an investment, is it fair to say 10,000, 25,000, 50,000? Are these numbers that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, usually 25 to 50,000.
So typically, what you do is you always offer a selection of choices. 90% of people always answer yes to one of those choices rather than check something else. Then I'll say to you, can you share with me the last stock you bought? Do you remember, John?
Yeah, it was Tesla.
You bought Tesla. Wow, great investment. We love the company here. How many shares did you buy? Do you recall?
It was 200 shares.
So what I'm doing basically is I'm keeping you on the phone as long as you'll have me. I'm asking you a series of questions to get to know you. The more information I have, the better chance I have of picking the right investment opportunity for you on my next call, which will come exactly 10 days after this introductory call. So there's really a science.
You're data gathering. You're basically gathering data on my answers.
Well, have you ever been to the doctor?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever been to a doctor for the first time?
Yeah.
You walk in, and typically there's a window that's usually clear, with plexiglass, and there's some lady sitting behind it. And you say, I'm John McGuire. I'm here to see Dr. Fugazi. She says, oh, yes. Okay. Nice to see. Gives you this clipboard, and it's got a bunch of papers on it, and your hands it. She goes, why don't you fill this out for us, and then give me your photo ID and your insurance card and all that. And you'll sit there, and they'll ask you every freaking question in the goddamn world, right? They want to know your exact history. They're doing a physical, because how could the doctor treat you properly if he doesn't know who the hell you are, what medicines you're on, what conditions you had, what surgeries, et cetera, what allergies. And then you'll fill it out. You'll hand it back to the lady. She'll say, sit down, Joe. We'll be with you in a minute. Some lady will come out. She won't be the doctor, but she'll be a nurse, a PA, an RM, whatever. She'll bring you into a room. Still no doctor. She'll say, hey, John, how you doing? I'm just here to check your vitals. So now they want to see your blood pressure, your heartbeat, make sure, your reflexes, whatever. And then she'll bring all this information to the doctor. Now the doctor will look at all these different things, and he'll see you're insured, that you can pay, at least in America. I know in some of the other countries it's socialized, so it's sort of, and he'll come to you and say, John, so how are you today? What brings you here today? What's the issue? But he's already got he's done an examination of you before he's going to even discuss your current condition. So one of the problems is a lot of bogus, scammy financial people. They'll say, John, I got something for you. Listen, you want to make some money? I got this stock. It trades only for 15 cents. It's a gold or silver mining company in Panama. I've done a whole bunch of deals in my life, John, just so you know, in Canada, in Vancouver and Toronto, and I got friends that own brokerage firms there and everything. So I know I'm talking with 40 years of knowledge, experience, and real life experience and understanding. It's not like I learned my stuff in the classroom. I'm out there doing business 40 years. But before I can speak to you in good conscience as a real financial professional, I have to know everything about you. You might not want to buy stocks. You only invest in fixed income or bonds. You might have friggin' $2 million sitting in a checking account, not getting any interest. I mean, if I don't do a complete examination of you, I'm a liar, cheater, scammer, or I'm just a stupid, inexperienced kid. So what I say to you is, and to your audience, you make sure when somebody comes to you and recommends something, they know a lot about you. It's like a doctor coming to you and say, here, you look green, erythromycin. You might be allergic to erythromycin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I take a lot of pride in the fact that I became very successful in that industry. My government has painted me a little bit as a devil or a demon or notorious, but I'm a legit guy. I was in a legit business. I was painted a certain way because I did some things that disrupted the status quo in the financial markets. You mentioned them when you.
I want to get into that. So you're doing these calls and you're making 300 calls a day. Out of 300 calls, you're getting what kind of response? What kind of response from out of those 300 saying, "Hey, yeah, you know what? It's okay. Send me when you got something. Send me a package and I'll take a look at it." So out of the what was your percentages like?
So you're doing 300 dials is the real number, right? So 300 dials, 100 calls, meaning people that answer the phone that you say, "Hey, my name is Mandell." Is it? And then the 90 people slam dunk you, say, "I'm not interested. Don't call me again," whatever. So out of 10, your goal as a young man in this business is to get 10 qualified leads a day. It's very difficult, but that's got to be your average if you want to be a millionaire on Wall Street, right? I'm just sharing this with you. And a lot of guys just don't have the moxie to do this, so they cheat, or they say they made 300 dials, they made 150 or 200 dials, and they say they got 10 leads, but they didn't really talk to 10 people and didn't get real financial information from those 10 people. Sometimes you got to make 400 dials a day to get you 10 leads, or 500. And, some days they come easy. Some days, you make 50 calls and 10 people already picked up the phone, happy to talk to you.
You got to work the law of averages.
Yeah, statistical averages. But I'm giving you the real numbers that are preached by firms, and I've owned many firms, by the way, on the street. And so now you're going to get 10 qualified leads. And I'm going to break it down for you and for your audience. Out of those 10 leads, if you got them and they're real, 3 people will always open an account, begin a relationship with you. 3 people will never do business with you or won't. What you do with the other 4 undecideds, that will determine your level of success on the street as a stockbroker. Now, my closing rate when I get leads is close to 100%, high 90s, meaning if I get you back on the phone, because I don't take a lead unless I'm pretty certain I'm going to have a relationship, because I'm already having a relationship with you, just the qualifying process. To me, that's the single most important thing in sales. Okay, people, if I asked you what's the most important thing in sales, 90% of all sales will say the close. It's incorrect. The hardest thing is the opening, because if I open properly and I carry the opening, the close comes quite easily if you're really a qualified lead and I'm not cutting corners, cheating, rushing the process, etc. If I'm being honest with myself, okay? A good lead is a guy that'll stay on the phone with you as long as you can, basically as long as you capital.
So your first year in business, how much you making? How much you making your first year business as a stockbroker, as a Wall Street broker?
I made 320,000 or so, 320 or 330.
Wow.
My first year, and I became I'm in this training program at EF1, right? Out of 130 people, and I'm in this big giant boardroom for sales training and everything, and we're being evaluated. And I didn't even come in the top 35% based on them listening to me and this and that. And I was very green and I was very nervous. And you had guys at that time, they were lawyers that saw the bull market thing. They stepped out of their law practice and wanted to become licensed stockbrokers. and you had CPAs, accountants, professional accountants that would step out of their CPA practice to become stockbrokers, and you had MBAs. I was the only one in my class in New York out of 12 people that was just a regular college graduate. And I was very intimidated at first because these guys knew everything there was to know about stocks and bonds and investments and trusts and all these different things. I didn't know anything. And I was very nervous. And most of these people were professionals that already had money and had money in the stock market. And I'm a drug addict at the time. And I'm out every night. And every dime I made, I'm spending. I started with $1,500 in my account in 1983. By the time of my 30th birthday, I'm proud to say I turned it into $30 million.
Wow.
I was stoned the whole time. But I'm good at this business. I understand markets. I understand the psychology. I understand the buying and selling habits, trading. Now, of course, I'm a whole nother level. I can see things. And I would caution everybody to be extremely careful right now because we're headed for a huge fall.
I heard you say this on the Brad Lee show, dropping bombs.
Correct.
You said this stock market is going to collapse to make 1929 look like a day at the ballpark. Why do you say that?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, we don't have a free market anymore. The government's involved, and they've put in all kinds of measures that would prevent a market. Like let's say 1987, we went down 25% basically in one day. Today, when you get to 10%, they'll close the market. They'll stop trading for an hour. You can't. They won't allow it to go down like that.
Yeah, there's trigger mechanisms that'll just halt the market.
Right. So they have. However, we are in for a world of hurt and pain. The real estate market's going to get crushed. The stock market's going to get crushed. And I will say that whoever wins tonight, whoever the next is going to have there's going to be a lot to it. There'll be a bump up if Trump wins. If Harris wins, people are going to be running for the hills. I'm just saying she has policy, some of which I agree with, by the way. I'm a liberal socially, but I'm conservative fiscally.
Well, she's looking to tax unrealized capital gains.
That's the end of America. Just so you know, it's the end of the stock market. It's the end of everything.
That's the craziest thing. First of all, I don't think that'll ever get passed.
It'll never get passed. But
you got people like
the mentality.
Like people like Nancy Pelosi, that's going to freak the fuck out, right?
Well, here's the thing: the people that already are in power just want to stay in power. The people that already have the money, they just want to keep the money, and they really want to have essentially a socialist type of country. They open the borders, they let the illegals come in. They call them undocumented. I don't know. They accused me of doing illegal things, and they prosecuted me. Guys running across the border with no papers, all of a sudden illegals are not illegals. I mean, I don't understand how they can honor that. It's illegal. And they punish some people for doing illegal things and millions of others they don't. I don't get that. That's one of the problems with big government and bad policy and all these different things.
Do you think the government tried to make an example out of you? Because I want to get into that because
they didn't try. They did.
Yeah, you created Sky Capital, and you were able to bring an American company and get it listed on a London stock exchange, and then you got another. I think it was Sky Ventures.
Enterprises, my fund, venture capital fund. I got these companies public.
Doing very well. Combined net worth is over $400 million, these companies, and you're dealing with senators and CEOs. I mean, you're riding the wave. What happens?
So what happened? Let me just explain to your audience. It's really important, and I think everybody's going to understand it intuitively right away because I can explain it and break it down very simply. I created this company, Sky Capital. I finally got it was wild for me just to get approval. Of course, $1 million took me over a year, but I got it done with the best lawyer in America. His name was Robert Hoyt. Wilma Hale now was Wilma Cutler Pickering then. And my plan was to take it public and then to grow it using the proceeds from the offering and the ability to issue stock in my company and grow it up. I never try and reinvent the wheel. I think the wheel works just fine. You try and use bring your own wheel, maybe decorate it or doing it differently. But also, I live by a couple of axioms. One is the greatest wealth is created not by innovation, but by imitation. It's finding something that works and bringing it somewhere they don't have it. So we have still the most sophisticated and amazing financial engineering in the world in America. By the time I did get sober in 1990, 33 years old, all the guys who were at my level prior to me getting sober now own billion-dollar hedge funds. They're presidents of banks and brokerage firms. And I never got there because my disease, my addiction and alcoholism really destroyed my ability in business to go any further than I did. And I basically was wiped out starting from zero. And by the time I built Sky Capital and I wanted to go public on NASDAQ, I saw all these issues and problems because everybody had already done this kind of thing. And I wasn't bringing anything new to the game. And there were all kinds of obstacles and hurdles. And I looked outwards at the world and I saw an opportunity in parts of the world where they didn't have the financial engineering that we had in America. So I used what I knew. I put together a team of guys and I went over to London. Now I had been, by that time, only stockbroking in parts of the world where they speak English. Canada, the UK, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, great place, Wales, people don't know. And Scotland, I mean, I'm such a fan of Ireland and Scotland, the British, I love the UK. And, they love me. And, look at South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, all these places speak English. I could communicate over the phone. I just had to understand what was the process to acquire accounts, to meet new people, and to get them into investments. There's always every place, every jurisdiction has different rules, regulations, laws, customs. And that's why I wrote the Wealth Formula. This is my curriculum. You go to my website, rossmandell.com, 2 S's, 2 L's, and scroll down. You'll see the Wealth Formula for sale. My partner is Brad Lee. You mentioned Brad Lee, Dropping Bombs, Lightspeed VT. He's a most amazing man and a brilliant guy in his field. In this field, there's nobody that has an interactive system like Brad. And I created the most comprehensive business course in history. Using all my story, as we're talking through my story, there are different things to understand when you want to create a business, build a business, develop a business, how to structure it, how to pitch it, how to value it. So what happens is I go to London and I meet with the top law firm in London. And they basically say, what you want to do is impossible. It's never been done. It can't be done. Why don't you just go home? They tell me to go home. The only reason they agreed to meet me at the time was because a very good friend of mine, he was Lord Kenilworth. His name is Randall Sisley. He's the biggest landscape architect in the world. He's a senior member of the House of Lords. He owned Kensington Manor, which was the second or third biggest castle in the world. And he's told them to meet with me. We were friends, and he was a client, and et cetera. And so I said, wait a minute. What do you mean it's impossible? It's never been done. We said, well, it's two different things. Is it impossible or it's never been done? They said both. I said, was it like the 4-minute mile? For 5,000 years, they said it was impossible for a human being to break the barrier to run a mile in 4 minutes. And as soon as one guy did it, 1,000 guys have done it now. But that's the way life is, okay? So like I said earlier, obstacles are part of my life, and they don't frighten me. It's what I find makes life very interesting. You know what I mean? It makes life interesting when you have an obstacle and you can overcome it. I mean, I often wonder what is in a guy that would make him want to go to friggin', Mount Everest and climb Mount Everest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's freezing cold. People die. It's risky. I mean, what, would make someone want to dive down into like the bottom of the sea, with a tank on your back, my wife used to laugh at me because I couldn't understand what would make a guy want to surf a wave that's like 150 feet high. And they said, your whole life is about that. You just, you just pick different obstacles. And, it's a very interesting thing. So the guy, I said, well, let me ask you a question. If I wanted, like, what would I have to do? They said, well, this X, you'd need to find a member of parliament that vouched for you, maybe someone in the royal family even. You'd have to have like some senators and congressmen in America vouch for you in America. You'd have to do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm writing it down right in front of them. And 45 minutes later, I had accomplished every single thing. On the ride home, I called my friend Alexander Dumas. We're shaking Alexander. I hope you're watching this. Great guy. He was a chartered accountant, and he was the parliamentary appointee from the country of Albania, and he was the Queen Mother's date for 30 years. Alexander is a brilliant, wonderful man. He became chairman of all my companies over there. Vouched for me, took me around. I had Matthew Carrington, who was a member of parliament. He was on the Treasury Select Committee. That's of the highest ethics in all of parliament. I had Senator Larry Pressler, 3-term Senator Larry Pressler from South Dakota. They used to call him Ronald Reagan's boy. Good friend of mine, client. I had Congressman Tom McMillan, 6'11", NBA player, first-round draft pick, Atlanta Hawks. He learned his business from Ted Turner. Make a long story short, I put together a world-class group of people. I made them all propositions. They all became board members and stockholders in my company, Sky Capital. And then we persuaded Grant Thornton, the accounting firm now, one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. At the time, they had a capital markets division, and a lovely Scottish man named Graham Tom decided to give me a shot and agree to take me public over there.
Amazing. So
the oldest partnership.
You accomplished the impossible. They say it's impossible, it can't be done, never been done before. You don't even do it once, you do it twice. So
Right. Now, let me tell you why. Let me tell you the advantage. And this is where I get in trouble. While I'm there, now remember, I'm already a licensed professional making millions of dollars, millions on Wall Street in the markets. But nobody knows what I'm about to tell you. Nobody. When I tell you nobody, I'm talking about the smartest people that you know in the markets. I go over there. Now, we all know about when you go public, the whole idea of going public is you're opening your books up to the world. You become transparent, right? So that's the tough part and the important thing for investors. They're allowed your prospects. You have to report earnings and extensive audits, what they call public audits, public accounting, very expensive. The PCOAB, the Professional Accounting Board, is like big deal ever since the WorldCom and Enron debacles in 2001 when the dot-com crash, March 2000, the first end of the world. I had a ringside seat for all these things. And just so you understand, in America, I'm not sure about Canada, but I believe it to be true, you have quarterly reporting. That means every 90 days, you have to open your books, you got to report everything to the world. Very expensive, very extensive, and a lot of pressure on a company to perform. Every 90 days, you're being judged, graded, evaluated, et cetera.
And that's just to keep your position in the market, no?
Just to get public. Forget getting listed and traded. Just to get public, you have to be what they call a reporting company.
But as a public company, you're required, right?
No, this is what makes you a public company in America for the stock. People are allowed to see your books. You have to report earnings. You have to report revenues. You have to make projections. You have to report all these this highly detailed information. And the accounting firm has to sign off on it. And subject to prison, subject to fines of enormous magnitude. If the company messes up and the accounting firm is found to be at fault, it's the end of his career, whoever the account is. Make a long story short, I discover that in England, on the London Stock Exchange, which is the oldest stock exchange in the world, arguably the most prestigious, they only have biannual reporting. I'm like, what? What does that mean? They said, you only have one audit a year. And at 6 months, you have what they call a review, which is not nearly as involved, extensive, or expensive as a full-on public audit. So you have only one full audit a year. You're reporting your results biannually instead of quarterly, which is 4 times a year. It's only 2 times a year.
Yeah.
But at the 6-month mark, it's just a review. People don't know this. The American system is onerous. And the reason is because the accountants get paid. The lawyers get paid. There's no such thing as being a regulated company in America. You're either unregulated or overregulated.
Right.
And, on Wall Street, when you're dealing with people's money, I understand, the concept of needing public accounting. But it's become onerous. If you're a small company, you can't go public in America unless you have millions and millions to blow on all kinds of expenses, et cetera. And that sort of defeated the purpose of the public markets in the first place. It's supposed to be a place to get capital and to get recognition and all these different things. If you don't have capital, you can't go public now. It used to be to get capital. So I'm in London and I discover I'm doing this. I'm going public for 1/fraction of the cost, 1/10 of the cost. I'm a small company. I'm a startup company. Now, the thing is, because I'm good at my job, I had millions of dollars in the bank. Millions. I could afford to go public in America, but it would have been stupid. Now I'm going public in London, and the regulation is a fraction as onerous and it's a fraction of the cost. Why? Because in America, we have all these agencies and all these associations and all this nonsense, okay? It's all done to sort of allow the big boys to stay the big boys to really, we don't want competition. It's like the NFL. If you and I, John, found the 60 greatest football players in the world, we wanted to challenge, the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no amount of money in the world that would do that. The NFL is a lockdown on that. If you and I had found the best skaters in the world and we wanted to go challenge, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the NHL would have say, forget it. Right? The industries become regulated and locked down once they yield.
They're protecting the big boys.
That's what it is. The big boys put the gates up. Once enough big boys own something, they say, you know what? This is ours now. Sorry. Tough luck. And they do that, and I get it, and it's very smart.
Is it a big boys club?
Correct. So now I go public, and I'm successful. Everybody thought I would fail. Everybody thought I couldn't do it. Remember, I went public right after 9/11. So you had the dot-com crash in March of 2000, and that destroyed the marketplace. Yeah. I mean, to give you an idea, your audience, the biggest company in the world was WorldCom.
Yeah.
It went to zero.
Yeah.
Fraud.
Yeah.
The 4th biggest company in the world, Enron, went to zero. Fraud. Lucent Technologies, an A+ rated Bell company, right? We all grew up, blue chip Bell company, it's the phone company, whatever. It went from 80 to 0.
It's funny you talk about all these companies because I talk about all these companies in my book, Wealth Without Wall Street, why Wall Street cannot be trusted because of all this fraud.
But I want you to know that I did I looked you up. I checked out your profile, looked at your stuff, and very impressive.
Thank you.
You're a very, very impressive man. And I love what you're doing. And I love the book you wrote. And I'll do everything I can to help you plug it as well. And I just want your audience to know it's amazing. If you don't own it, go get it because it'll open your eyes. John is brilliant. And the things that you have to say, people should know. It's important what you just said. Wall Street cannot be trusted. And I'm here to tell you that. Although, I'm also enamored by Wall Street and so forth. But everybody, the Amazon we all know and love goes from 300 to 3.
That's crazy.
Imagine that.
Crazy.
Every .com went crazy down. And all kinds of things become revealed. And so the markets were shut down. There were no IPOs for a year. And then 9/11 happens. And the market is closed for more than a week.
Yeah.
You can't fly a plane in America for more than a week.
I remember those days.
We've been through 2 world wars.
Yeah, I remember.
We've been through 2 world wars, John. And that's never happened before. What these people did with their planes into the World Trade Center. They closed the stock markets for more than a week. And that coming on the heels of the dot-com crash. We're just starting to come out of the dot-com crash. The 9/11 happens. And this uncouth, uncultured American walks into London and says, I'm going to go public. In June of '02, I go public. I'm the first company to go public in London in like 2 years. And I'm up 40% day one.
Wow.
And then the stock exchange comes to me and says, you know what? We want you to go on television and speak to the nation. I'd never been on TV before. I was just celebrating. I went public. I did. There was a million obstacles, caveats, warnings, issues that came up, even after it was approved and we were trading and going. And now I'm finally saying, wow, I did it. I just start to relax. By this time, I'm stone cold sober. I don't drink. I don't take drugs, but I'm just so happy and elated. My crew's out getting drunk and having fun. And what happens is I get told I have to go on television for 9 minutes, and I got to get a different tie, and I can't wear my gold Rolex. I got to go wear a classy watch because the people in London don't want to see a brash American with a gold Rolex. It's really based. I've come to learn that's the case.
Mhm.
But I didn't really understand it, but I'm just listening to my advisors then. And I go on for 9 minutes. It's called CEO in the hot seat. And the only thing we asked, and they agreed, was they wouldn't bring up my drug addiction and my alcoholism in my past. They say, hello, Mr. Mandell. So glad to see you. You had a very successful day. I said, thank you. I said, how do you get the UK citizens to trust you? You know, being a drug addict, alcohol. Not even a minute in. So much for journalism and making deals and gentlemen and all that kind of stuff. But you know, I've been dealing with that all through the process of my personal healing and my sort of successes in business.
So what led to the indictment of you being found guilty of securities fraud? That's what I want to get to.
Essentially, I was found after a 5-week trial. I was accused of a million things. Turns out that I had at one point 4,100 people on my payroll. I had a big operation,
Wow.
2 sides of the Atlantic. I'm in 5 cities. I've got all kinds of businesses going on. Very successful, I might add. And they accused me eventually of manipulating the London Stock Exchange while I was in London with all non-Americans, all residents of the UK and Europe.
This
What?
is the SEC making this claim?
Well, okay, so I get a couple of prosecutors in New York brought this case. It was bizarre. It was called the case of first impression. American laws should not apply outside of America.
True.
And the UK took big exception when they said I manipulated the London Stock Exchange. And in fact, the London Stock Exchange came to my trial and said I most certainly did not. I committed no fraud in the UK. I don't have any complaints. I don't have any lawsuits, nothing, nada. And in fact, there are people over there that have invited me back to bring business, to bring new deals, new companies to London, because I did about 11 deals there while I had my brokerage firm there. Because I ended up buying a big UK brokerage firm. Went public there, which was the plan. And let me tell you what I've been told by the smartest lawyers and business guys. I didn't learn this till I was in prison. They say that I created the footprint for regulated American companies, brokerage firms, hedge funds, VCs, people like KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts, Blackstone, BlackRock, the biggest of the big, all went public overseas following the footprint I created. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have quarterly reporting. They didn't have the overburdensome regulation. And once you're public over there, it's very easy to just file a Form 10 and register your shares in America. Okay? Or do what they call an ADR, an American Depository Receipt. Deposit your shares that you own in London, put them in a bank, you get a receipt, and those receipts are trading on the New York Stock Exchange all day, every day. And I brought the first pipes to London, which are called private investment in public equity. And they said, these prosecutors said it was illegal. I manipulated the market and all these different things. And they got 12 sort of morons on a jury that half of them couldn't speak English to agree, because it's the United States government saying, I'm responsible for the fact that they don't have jobs and the market crashed. When all the guys that failed, the bailouts, remember the bailouts?
Yeah.
Hundreds of billions of dollars to bail out our banks and not one person was indicted. What the SEC
That's
did,
fucking crazy.
the SEC brags about this in 08, 09, and 10, that they indicted more people than ever before in the history of the SEC combined in those years, but nobody that was actually responsible for all those frauds and all that failure. And I sold my companies we closed the deal March 31st of 08, and they approved the sale and said I was not going to be indicted. But then in the summer of 09, when everything in America failed, the whole banking system failed, they went and they rounded up guys like me and said, all right, we're gonna indict this guy because he's responsible. All horseshit. And this is what I really hate about the United States, is you have a couple of really bad people, a lot of people. Listen, the guy that's running for president right now, who's neck and neck with the current sitting vice president, 78 years old, was accused of 92 felonies last year.
Yeah.
Was never accused of a felony in his life.
Yeah.
92 felonies, mostly by prosecutors out of New York. What a scam they're running. That's called lawfare. I'm the original victim of lawfare, much like they've done to guys like Russell Brand and Andrew Tate now. You know what I'm saying? The powers that be wield tremendous influence. And using attorneys general, DAs, U.S. attorneys, they sick them on you. They use it as a weapon.
Yeah, they weaponize them. I think this is,
people understand that now. They see it.
well,
It's been on display in America.
I think if you actually had two functioning brain cells and you were to say, who am I going to vote for? And I'm not going to judge you based on your political stance. But if someone said to me, here's a guy who's never had an indictment in his life, friends, he was a Democrat, now he's running again for president, and Letitia James campaigned on bringing him to trial and going after him. You've got the attorney general, you've got the mayor in New York. Everyone's after him. So you got 92 indictments and all these other charges.
92 counts.
And if you said to me that this guy's up for president, I'm going to say, I'm going to vote for the guy that they're most afraid of, because obviously they're very threatened by him. Because I think if he never said, I'm not running for president, I'm going to go about my way, you never would have seen these indictments.
Yep, they just rattle his cage. They rattle his cage. He rattled a lot of cages. I'm a disruptor as well. I was a disruptor, and in that industry, and according to very, very big, smart people, which will go unnamed, they said, according to what they know, not what they guess, what they know. These are very serious people. I cost Lower Manhattan $100 billion. $100 billion.
And how can they prove that?
Fees, trading profits.
Really?
All these companies, these big companies that ended up following my footprint, going public in Europe, and then swinging back to America with those same companies. None of the Americans got to share in all that billing and all that regulating, et cetera. All the trading profits that happen when you go public for the first time on KKR, Colbert, Kravis, and Roberts, a company that manages hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, things like that. And I understand, having been in prison now, one of the things that, guys look at you and say, don't ever fuck with my money. It's very base in prison. You don't have highly educated people for the most part, and they're very street people.
You go from a Wall Street powerhouse to federal prison, and you've seen both extremes of American dreams and the wealth system. Was it at that moment that you're in a federal prison that you realized that the system is rigged?
You know what? I always knew the system was rigged. I just didn't understand how rigged. I didn't understand that the level of corruption was so sophisticated and embedded, and And I really believe that people say, why'd you go to trial? You could have made a deal. You never would even went to prison. And I thought about that. And I said to my wife at the time, I said, she says, what are you going to do? You're going to go in front of a federal judge and admit to some fraud that you didn't commit. Is that what you're going to do? Is that the man I married? Is that the father? Is that your kids want to say you sat there, you stood there, and you said, I did this, I did when you didn't? And I knew that I was essentially facing a firing squad.
Oh.
But I still believed in America. I believed in the American way. I believed in our legal system. And, that's what really it killed that for me. When you go to federal prison, you realize they didn't pick on me specifically. I was handed to some prosecutors by the big boys on Wall Street. So that cost them a lot of money in their mind, even though they took advantage of exactly what I created. That's the craziest part. They used what I did to benefit themselves, and they jailed me and punished me. But what happened was, I believe that in America, if you didn't commit a crime, you can't be convicted. And what a stupid thing that is to believe in, I hate to say. They killed that last bit of a little boy in me that believed in, American way. You know what I mean? The good guys wear white, black, and, and all that. And it really, to this day, just talking about it is painful for me. Because, when I was in prison, I said I should have committed crime. I should have just stole $500 million because I managed billions of dollars. But I would never do that. And I marvel at it. And then I'm in prison. It's a crazy world there now. Like I left my 10,000 square foot house, my wife and my two lovely children. And I end up checking in that night. I'm in a room, 66 square feet, with two guys, two very fit, very good looking black guys that had been in prison combined for a total of 23 years.
Wow.
And they got this white guy coming in to their cell, 3-man in a cell, even though that's technically illegal in America. But they do it anyway. And
Are you segregated from? I mean, you
quickly
did white.
became like
The
the Godfather.
Yeah, they got you like, I guess they call it white collar crime. Are you segregated from the murders and the pedophiles and stuff like that, or it's just like you're all combined together?
So I sat in court during a 5-week trial, and I heard people go up there and just lie. People that were convicted, they were arrested doing illegal things, and the government said, "We got you. You're going away for 30 years. We got you, unless you give us Ross Mandell." Because I was a big name.
Yeah.
And my star was on the rise, and they wanted to cut my legs out from under me. And I don't blame these guys. When you really committed a crime and you got caught red-handed, and these people are looking at you and saying, you could walk free, but you're working for us now. Here's the story you got to tell. Well, you're going to jail for 30 years, and we're going to take everything away from you. I mean, you're going to tell them whatever you want. And that's the system in America today. That's the legal system in America.
So who felt threatened by you? Was it the guys that say Goldman Sachs, Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch? Are these the head guys that they felt threatened?
You can pick your name.
Yeah.
All the names, every one of those names you say, every name there. I don't want to ruffle any more feathers than I have already.
Yeah.
I'm free now. I served my time. I did it like a man. I never lied. I never cheated. I made a plea deal. I never went in front of a judge. I didn't wear a wire. The Wolf of Wall Street, Jordy Belfort, everybody does their own thing. And I really respect him as a producer and as a business guy, a great salesman. But, he wore a wire. And he, for 6 months, ran around and basically got 50 people indicted. Many of them were not guilty of anything but listening to Jordan Belfort.
Right.
And they all went to prison and got arrested because he wore a wire. He only did 22 months in prison, and he just basically committed straight fraud from the moment he became into the business. And I'm a real guy. I do real business. I worked at real firms. I ran real firms and built real firms. It did the right thing for the most part. And here I am in 144 months in prison, bro. I go in at 57 years old. And the only thing I had was knowing the knowledge that I'm a solid guy. And the first thing they do when you go in prison is they say, we want to see your paperwork. Put your papers on the desk and take a walk. That was my first minute in prison. I said, what do you mean? They said, you got a bunch of papers when you checked in, right? I said, yeah. I said, put them on the fucking table right here and go take a walk. Like I seen a lot of prison movies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I read a lot of prison books. I was ready to punch the guy in the face. But I'm in prison for like 1 hour.
Wow.
And I'm thinking maybe I ought to wait. So I just stepped out. They say you hit the biggest guy and now you have respect. Yeah. That's a lot of horseshit, by the way. So I walk outside the cell.
Yeah.
And I come back in and the guys are like, Ross, I'm Henry, I'm Mike. You're a cool dude. You're okay with us. You can come stay in our cell. What does the paperwork mean? They said, 90% of the time when an old white guy comes into federal prison, mind you, I'm not in a camp, I'm in a prison. When you're in a federal prison, they said he's either a chomo or a rat. And we see that you're neither. And I'm like, damn. I said, I know what a rat is. I feel like an idiot because, what's a chomo? They look at each other, a child molester.
Yeah.
So in prison, we had a lot of pedophiles. And at this particular prison, it's called called a PC, protective custody. That's where they send a lot of the pedophiles. And so at one point I lived with like 50. And this is a real problem, I can say. And these are some very sick people, I'm just going to say. I would normally say teacher's zone, but I have 2 young daughters. I had to take down pictures on my bulletin board.
Wow.
Because guys would come and look through the window just to look at pictures of my family, my kid. I mean, it's sick.
Yeah.
These people are very, they can't even control themselves. It's not, they're normal. They think we're sick.
Mm-hmm.
They really believe we're sick. They think we are like them, but we just try and disguise it and everything. And so I'm sort of an expert on this kind of thing. And the 2 guys said to me, you're all right. We shake hands. They let me put my stuff in there. And they say, bro, you're the man. I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, you figured out how to rob $140 million without a gun. You got to teach us. I know that sounds pretty stupid.
Yeah.
But that has literally been throughout my prison stay, which was really, I did about 7 years inside between prison, 2 prison camps, detention center, 3 county jails. I mean, I've got quite a resume inside the system now. I'm sort of an expert, unfortunately. And I became like a teacher, an advisor, and that's what I do now. I'm educating people in the world of business and finance. That's why I say I wrote the Wealth Formula. It's the most comprehensive business curriculum ever produced by anybody, anywhere. And I challenge, and I do this on every pod, I challenge everybody, the Wharton School of Business, IT, Stanford, NYU, any business program. I endowed the Maryland MBA program with $500,000 back in 2004. I endowed, that's the Ross Mandell Leadership for Tomorrow. I'm recognized by the Terrapins, Terp Magazine. And
so, yeah, I want to talk about the wealth formula. I want to know, what did you think about creating this wealth formula while you were in prison? Like, what inspired you to create this? Because I'll tell you, I get asked all the time. You got Wall Street in New York. In Canada, you got Bay Street, and I was a Bay Street advisor for 17 years. Okay. And I was given the old traditional advice: save, invest in your RSPs, which is your 401k, and your IRAs, when here is called a TFSA. And I'm just like, save, accumulate, right? So I did that for 17 years, and finally got to a point where I watched 2001. I watched the markets crash. I watched the opening day of because I got into business in 1999. I watched the markets drop 700, 1,000 points.
You were there.
I was there.
You got a ringside seat.
I watched 2008, 2009. I watched markets dropping 1,000 points a day. I had clients calling me in tears. John, I'm about to retire next year. My portfolio has dropped 50%, and I'm still getting paid. Why? Because I charged a 1% fee on the assets, and I was still getting paid. after a while, that doesn't sit with you
Right.
well anymore. And I realized in 2016 that the advice that I'm giving is not benefiting them. I'm supposed to be the guy that they come to get advice to help build their retirement. What am I doing? I'm building my own retirement because I'm gathering assets, charging a fee, building my own book of business that when I get to a point, I'm going to sell this book of business and I'm going to retire. So I sold my book of business in 2016 and I became the guy that was teaching people how to really create wealth without using guys like me. So I wrote this book to educate people on really how to create wealth.
Correct.
And so I want to know what inspired you to create the wealth formula based on, everything that you know, because, you took over 100 companies public, you made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I guess at what point did you realize that it's so fucking corrupt and rigged for the people that are on the inside? At what point did you realize I need to share what I know with the people? Because that's in 2019, that's when I realized I'm not doing justice. I'm doing something wrong if I'm not going to share my story and I'm going to share information on how to really create wealth. What was it for you?
I'm in 83 and I go to Wall Street. And I stayed on Wall Street all my trial, 2010, right? When I'm on trial, I'm indicted, all these things. So you're talking 27 years. I lived in a bubble. Everybody worked for me. All my friends were on Wall Street, family, everything, everybody I knew was in this industry. I had no sense of money in the real. I had no exposure to like the real world. All the men that I would come to me that became my clients, friends, were all wealthy people. Couldn't afford to give me 250 grand. I really didn't have time to talk to you on the phone. I mean, I would actually refer to you to other people. I'll never forget, there was a guy that wanted to do business with me. He says, I could send you 100 grand. I'm like, listen, that's great. I'm going to put John on the phone. He says, who's John? I said, he works for me. He's a good guy, very smart. He goes, no, I want to do business with you. I said, I'm sorry, I can't give you that kind of time. He said, what do you mean? It's $100,000. Now, the guy was worth millions. I said, I'm not trying to step you up money. I'm just trying to say to you, I'm dealing with guys that send me $1 million, to 800,000, 500. I can't get the proper amount of time that you need to prove to you that I'm the right guy and to get you the kind of returns that you're seeking. I just don't have that time. So I'm dealing and wheeling with guys, at high levels. And of course I knew the game was rigged. I was a rigger. I was rigging. I didn't do the things they said, but I did plenty of things. But I was always very cognizant of the law. I got 1790 and I didn't get sober. Sober is a word. I'm not just clean means I don't do drugs. I don't do alcohol, mind altering substance in my body. That's clean. That's not sober. Sober is a set of principles you choose to live your life by. And we call a familiar term is the 12-step program. I wrote a book about this called Rock Solid. And I wrote a second book called The Happiness Principle. These are books that are for sale on my website right now. $20. The downloadable versions. I don't even deal with the physical products. For what? And you can read these books. And I wrote these books. And I wrote the wealth formula from soup to nuts. And so I go to prison and people see 140 was I'm a big guy. I'm a stock marketer. Can you teach us business? Can you teach us stock market? I got a great idea. My wife's got a jewelry line. It's in the hood, but I want to make it a business, all these different things. So I start teaching inmates the basic tenets of business. And John, I'm stunned. I'm stunned at how, I don't want to use the word ignorant because these guys were smart at other things. Did not understand business, the fundamentals of business, ABCs to me, which are like, I don't even think about them. So teaching guys, but I had to go I had to go deep into my head and remember some of the ABCs. I just do them. I don't think when I brush my teeth, but you got to find the right soft bristle. You got to have the right toothpaste. You got to brush a certain way. The 4 quadrants, all these different things.
Yeah.
Who thinks about all that? You just do it. So in business, I'm like that. With the stock market, I'm like that. And I start teaching these two guys in my cell, and then a third guy comes in, and he wants to sit in with us. We would pull our chairs out in the TV room outside the cell in the unit. We'd sit around, and they take out their start a business and had a why you have you incorporate, why you would pick a certain legal entity, a LLC versus an LLP versus a MLP versus an LLC versus an S corp, a C corp. Do you want to incorporate in Nevada? Do you want to incorporate in Wyoming? Do you want to incorporate in Delaware? The answer is no. Do you want to incorporate onshore, offshore? Do you need a trust to govern this and that? All the different rules and regs and concepts that involve business. A lot of these guys were street guys that never graduated high school. They never went to college. They never had any opportunities in life. And then I found that the guys that were real business guys, doctors, lawyers, accountants, they don't understand certain things. Needed to understand. They were like sort of holes in their understanding of the world. And I would relate everything back to how I learned it. How I learned the first, I went from a limited partnership in my first, I had a master limited partnership, first brokerage firm, how I raised money. I brought in limited partners. I wrote documents and bylaws, et cetera. And then the smart guys in Washington created the LLC, the tax advantage of this versus the corporation, all these different things. And I started to teach this in a very deliberate fashion because I wasn't dealing with, really, educated guys. But they wanted to know. They wanted to learn. These guys, had made mistakes. They found themselves in prison. They don't want to go back up people or deal drugs and all these different things. At some point, I'm sitting in a unit. I got like 15 guys around me, and the police walk in. So it's they're called SIS, the Special Investigative Services. They're police in prison, and they say, "Mr. Mandell, I mean, we could charge you with inciting a riot." There's 16 people sitting very quietly in their green lawn chairs in the unit, listening to me talk about business and finance and the stock market, and this is what I'm inciting a riot. And I said, "These guys' business." Turns out half cops at every prison I've been to, every detention center, every jail, would come and sit in the group with me eventually, where I would be teaching. These are my biggest fans today. It's crazy, right? And I said, I'm just teaching guys. They said, can't sit with more than two people in one spot in prison. Otherwise, we could charge you with inciting a riot. You have to go to and psychology, and I'm sure they'll be very happy for you to teach courses there. That's began the process where I become an educator. So I go to psychology the next day, and all these guys sit around peacefully, and they want to learn. So I start teaching a class out of the psychology department. And then I start teaching a class out of the education department. And then I become, I have to submit curriculums ahead of time. And the administration people at the prison said, we'd love you to teach ACE courses. I said, what's an ACE course? He said, well, if these guys are willing to sit and learn with you, we can give them credit towards early release, towards parole, towards probation, all these different things. So I said, of course I'll do that. I want to help people. It became a good thing. And then, so I'm teaching people, and I've got a full class all the time, but then I get a call from the lieutenant's office one night. I go to the lieutenant's office and say, Mr. Mandell, we just got a call from Washington. American Greed people have alerted us that you're going to be featured on the show American Greed. Apparently, you're the finale of season 9. It's the biggest case of the year.
Wow.
And they want me to check into which is the whole solitary confinement, special housing unit. I said, something wrong? They said, no. We want to do this for your own protection. I said, why? They said, well, we don't know what's going to be shown in the show. And there might be inmates here that lost their life savings to some stockbroker. For all we know, you. And we had a doctor here who was beaten almost to death because he was featured on a show last, and he had to go to the hospital, and it was a big problem for him. He might never be the same, all these different things. I said, I've never done anything I'm ashamed of. I don't know what they're going to say or do, but I don't want to go to the show. And they really tried to push me to go to the show. It's like standard operating procedure. I'm not going to go to the hole where it's like a negative thing. It's a horrible place.
Yeah.
I've never been, thank God. But comes on, American Greed comes on. I would urge all your listeners to watch it. It's on Peacock TV. It's called The Sky's the Limit because my companies were called Sky Capital, Sky Capital Bank, Sky Capital Enterprises, Sky Capital LLC, all these different, I had 30 Sky companies because my daughter's name is Sky. I named it after my daughter when she was 3 months old. It's a great story. If you buy my curriculum or you watch my stuff, you'll get to see all these, hear all these things for real. And after that show, American Greed came out, I became sort of like prison royalty. I hate to say it loud, stupid, but these guys see me on TV and they thought I was very cool and very impressive. And they still don't. If you watch it, I want you to tell me what you think I did wrong.
Okay.
On every American Greed episode, you see a crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my case, you have one guy they show who lost money, who I met twice in my life, never did a deal with, and they put him on. And I was sued exactly once during the whole time by one person who in the UK who admitted the only reason he named me in the lawsuit is because his lawyer told him to, and that he never spoke to me, and he never did deal with me. He did business with a stockbroker that worked at my firm that did the wrong thing. Admittedly, he did the wrong thing. I never knew about it, never heard the guy's name before, but my only lawsuit. The people that know me, that do business with me, no, I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't steal. I'm a straight up guy. I don't hide if there's bad news. I'm not afraid of issues. And things can be always worked out. But you know, when I was young and I was a drug addict and I was active, I made a lot of bad choices and a lot of bad mistakes. Although I never stole from anybody or any of these different things that sometimes I've been accused of. And I made bad decisions back then.
In the meantime, you've got in 2008, you've got all these big companies, all these big banks, all these big investment firms who sold mortgage-backed securities and lost
Correct.
billions of dollars to people, and they knew these were bullshit mortgages, and not one person went to jail. That's what I
went to jail. I went to jail and I didn't do any of that shit.
and that's what fucking pisses me off. And then they got bailed out. They got bailed out. That to me is ridiculous. Yeah. You know, I really would love to.
And they arrested me.
We're about running out of time, but I want to know how people can get your wealth formula. Where can they get it again?
Okay, so I'm on every social media platform there is.
Let everybody know your
Instagram,
handle,
Facebook.
where they can find you.
It's Ross Mandell, 2 S's, 2 L's, Boca Raton, Florida. On YouTube, I'm the real Ross Mandell. And there's a link attached in my bio and every social media site, or better, go to my website, rossmandell.com, and you scroll down and you formula for sale. Just click on the links. It'll take you through the Lightspeed Bradley's ecosystem. I have a store on Lightspeed right next to Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Damon Shark Tank, Andy Elliott, you know, the top people in the world. And the Wealth Formula is the most comprehensive business course ever created. I'll put up my life, my reputation. I'll go on TV line and in front of the camera and compare it and show it to any business course ever offered. It's my life's work, 114 pages of digital downloadable text with hundreds of hyperlinks to the course material. We want to show you where we got our information from along the way, downloadable PDFs, quizzes, exams. You have 14 modules that were recorded right here in my studio. And then also in Nevada with Bradley, we made an interactive experience. It's very entertaining. I tell you and explain to you my own life story and show you how I learned all these different things I'm sharing with you. We teach you how to take an idea, turn it into a proper business, how to fund it, how to structure it, how to pitch it, how to document the journey. We include $5,000 of legal documents. These are real documents that you have to buy from Legals or other places on the internet. We throw all that in because we want you to take this and make yourself $1 million, own business. There's two people in this world. There are bosses and I'm here with John McGuire. He's a boss. It's about time you become a boss. And that's what my life's work is about, is enabling, empowering, and educating people now that are less fortunate. But if you're $1 million guy, every guy I surround myself with today is a millionaire. Every one of these guys learning. formula, things they didn't know.
Well, here's the thing. You don't learn this stuff in school. No one's going to teach you how to set up an LLC, set up a trust, how to find lenders, how to protect yourself. So, guys, if you're listening, go to Ross Mandell's website. If you want to learn how to set up a business, download and pay for his wealth formula. It's going to teach you everything you need to know about business. The other thing that you're not going to learn is my book, Wealth Without Wall Street. You are not going to learn about money in school. You're not going to learn about this on Bay Street or Wall Street. The information that I give in here is going to teach you how to create real wealth, reduce your fees, cut your future taxes, and create real wealth without risking your dollars on Wall Street. I'm not saying Wall Street is bad. I'm saying there's better ways of investing and doing things with your money and creating more wealth. Ross, this has been amazing. I love your story. I love the content. I love following you and seeing the information that you're putting out. You are an inspiration that, even though you rode the high, you were a multi-millionaire at your peak, lost it all, and you're back building again. When, you're 67 years old, I mean, you could retire and you say, fuck it, I'm not going to get back into it, but you're on the horse again and you're actually teaching people what you know. And I don't think there's a better person out there and more qualified to teach people about business than the guy who's already been through it. So congratulations to you. I wish you all the success. And you know what? If you're in Toronto, let's hook up. I'd love to have you live in the studio here and hear more about your story.
And vice versa. I want to invite you to South Florida. And no, every Canadian comes to South Florida. I mean, every time I go out to dinner, I'm like, where you from? I'm Montreal, Vancouver. I mean, it's unbelievable. Nova Scotia. I mean,
Yeah.
I love my Canadian friends and come in,
Love it.
when that I've been to Canada in February.
It's cold.
March. Holy moly.
It's cold, man.
Gotta be a real man. Canadians are real men. And women, boy, tough. It's so cold. Montreal, I had a girlfriend in Montreal, in Côte St. Luc, and I went to see her one January. We didn't leave the house. When it was like 20 below zero.
It's minus 30 degrees Celsius. It's crazy. Yeah, you go out and your lips, your eyelashes, your eyeballs freeze.
70, correct. 75 degrees in South Florida during this period of time. Come enjoy the Ross Mandell podcast. I'd love to have you. You're fascinating. Your book's amazing, and you're a great guy.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Ross. That's all for today, folks. Take care of your wealth and your health.